Hi. Welcome to our April 16th, 2025 workshop. Couple of announcements. The milling work has been completed on streets around the village. The paving is going to take place tomorrow for 17, Thursday, on Benedict, Lund, the Boulevard, Cedar Street Spur, Mountain between Cedar and Craigside, and a temporary surface is being placed on the north end of Fishkill. Traffic should be able to move while they're doing this. They're doing a lane at a time, and they will be flaggers. So you should be able to get through, but if you can avoid those areas while they're being paved, that would be. Next is opportunity to add or modify agenda. I just wanted to move up the Clearwater discussion in case there are members of the public who are here for NIMTIC and would like to move up Clearwater too. Is that all right? Yeah. So, hello, Miriam and David, Trustee Starbuck, Deputy Mayor Woods, Mayor Foley, Trustee Bosey. There are 0 members of the public here, so and they're not online. So, give us a rundown. We will certainly push this out via our website and social media. We do have a reporter here, Mike Turton from the Current is here.
Choose view center.
Yes. Would you like to share screen?
Yes, I will share my screen to start. Give me 1 second.
Take over as a presenter. Choose a co-host. There we go.
All right. Should we just jump right in then?
Go for it. I know you have a hard stop in a few minutes.
Okay, great. Yes. So just introduce myself again. My name is Miriam Salerno. I work at the Voorhees Transportation Center at Rutgers University, and I work for the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, supporting the Community Planning Workshop Program. And I'm here with my colleague, David.
David Dritz. Yes, hi, I'm David Dritz. I'm the project manager for the Community Planning Workshop Program. And maybe we could kick off the presentation with the next screen.
Sure.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah,
so,
that's great.
My presentation is basically, I'd like to welcome everyone, Honorable Mayor Foley, trustees, and I'd say community members, but there appear to be none right now, but hopefully they will sign in and they'll hear this presentation. Thank you for having us here this evening. My name is David. So just a little bit about our organization. NIMTIC, which is the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, serves as the federally designated metropolitan planning organization for New York City, Long Island, and the lower Hudson Valley. Our role is to work closely with local municipalities to plan effective transportation systems and help communities become eligible for federal funding support. Tonight, we'll be presenting the results of our work conducted through our Community Planning Workshop Program in collaboration with the Voorhees Transportation Center at Rutgers and their outreach group, the Public Outreach and Engagement Team, known as POET. If you could go to the next slide, that would be great. So the Community Planning Workshop Program provides technical planning assistance to communities seeking to improve transportation connectivity, pedestrian and cyclist safety, downtown development, and other related topics as developed from our long-range regional transportation plan and the coordinated development emphasis areas. We work with local leaders and residents to identify specific areas of need and develop actionable improvements and recommendations. These reports position communities like Cold Spring to pursue future grants and implement beneficial local projects. So for this program, NIMTIC collaborated closely with the Allen Voorhees Transportation Center at Rutgers, which is a nationally recognized center specializing in transportation planning and policy. A critical partnership with POET, and I'd like to acknowledge the hard work that Miriam and her team has provided in engaging in our public engagement process. Go to the next slide. That'd be great. So the project will discuss tonight reflects the community's feedback on several priority areas, improving pedestrian safety, reducing traffic congestion, enhancing transit access, and preserving the character of Cold Springs' historic downtown. The recommendations developed aim to enhance your residents' quality of life, improve safety and mobility, and create a stronger, more connected village environment. It's my pleasure to pass the baton to Miriam, who will take you through our planning process and the report's recommendations.
Great. Thank you, David.
My pleasure.
Okay, I'm gonna skip this because we've already introduced ourselves. As David mentioned, this was a collaborative project working very closely with Mayor Foley and other stakeholders in the village of Cold Spring. And as he mentioned, we came together to address the need to maintain the high quality of life in Cold Spring and also increase pedestrian safety by looking at opportunities to reduce traffic congestion, especially during peak season when you have quite a number of tourists. So here, these are the, I'm gonna kind of go just as an aside, since we are short on time, I'm gonna go through this presentation pretty quickly, but I wanna iterate that the entire report is available online. So if I'm going too quickly over anything and you want to go back and look at it in more detail, nothing that I'm saying here tonight is not in the report, and the report has everything here and more. So if there's anything you would like more detail on, you can reference the report. So these were the problem statements and the goals that we came up with. And now I'm going to kind of talk through the planning process, how we took the goals and objectives that we established with the mayor and turned it into action. So the first thing that we did was to do a site visit in Cold Spring. I had a team of 4 or 5 planners come with me to see Cold Spring. And we walked the village with Mayor Foley and identified key locations that we wanted to focus on for this study. So these key locations are the Main Street and Visitor Center intersection, Fair Street, the Market Street and Lund Terrace intersection, the Main Street and Morris Avenue intersection, or Route 301 and New York 9D. And then we also looked at the Cold Spring trolley service frequency and routes. So the next thing that we did was some extensive desktop research. We looked at these areas in Cold Spring, did data analysis, and came up with a website, a public-facing website about these problem spots that included, a lot of background information, identified the sites, identified, some of the issues we were trying to tackle. It also gave us a place to have project updates and share information all in one centralized location. We also launched a community survey in March of 2024. This survey was really important to get some initial feedback from the community before the workshop. So we collected residents and visitors' opinions about their experience in these 4 locations in the village and about the trolley, and we specifically sought information about difficulties, challenges, perceptions of safety, and suggestions for improvements in any of the areas that were identified. And we were really pleased. We had 187 submissions to the survey, and 87% of those respondents did identify as village residents. So we took everything that we learned from our desktop research and our site visit and the survey, and we put together a community planning workshop. This was kind of the keystone event of our work with the village, and that took place on April 29th, 2024. And what we did in this workshop was we shared the feedback from the community survey, and we went through a series of ideas and recommendations that were based on the feedback that we heard and the analysis from my team of planners and professionals of ways that we can improve these intersections. So during this workshop, we had an open discussion. It was really collaborative. We used a tool called Google Jamboard so people could type in their ideas directly onto the screen. We also had facilitators. We did breakout rooms where we looked at each of the intersections, and all of that feedback was documented. It's all provided in the report as an attachment. I should say all the full survey results and the workshop results are all provided in the report as an appendix. And it was also reported and post it online for any community member that couldn't attend the workshop that wanted to participate. They could watch the workshop and then submit additional comments. So what did we find? So we put all that together and we came up with recommendations that really followed complete streets and placemaking strategies. We had some kind of overall recommendations for the village and then some very specific recommendations for these intersections and areas of concern. So I'm going to walk through each of them now. They're up here on the screen. And again, I'm going to go pretty quickly through this, and some of this is pretty technical information. So it might, if you have other questions, we'd be happy to answer them over email, or you can contact our team if you need more than we're able to provide tonight. So the first recommendation that we made was to complete the sidewalk network. So we noticed both in our site visit and with an analysis using Google Street View and GIS that the sidewalk network throughout the village is incomplete. Main Street area has a very robust sidewalk network, but there are other areas with major gaps. Some of them are listed here: Fair Street, Lund Terrace, New York 9D, Route 19 North, and other residential areas in the heart of the village. So one of the recommendations we made, which is to complete a full sidewalk audit of the village. That wasn't something that we really had time to do in detail, but it's something that would help identify all of the areas that are in need of sidewalk improvement. And you could work directly with Putnam County to try to address some of the sidewalk needs in the village. The other overall recommendation is to improve wayfinding. So wayfinding is a set of actions and strategies that are used to make a space more navigable, easier for residents and visitors to get around, to identify key locations of interest or places people might want to go. It's both helpful for drivers and pedestrians and could actually even encourage people to walk over driving. You could even have wayfinding that tracks the distance from one location to another. It's 5,000 steps or a quarter of a mile that can encourage people not to get in their car, but to walk instead. So we suggest that the village may want to develop a wayfinding plan and come up with an overall approach for clear and consistent signage that can align with the branding of the village. Okay, and then there are a whole host of intersection improvements and traffic calming strategies that we walk through in the report. These are kind of talked about both in reference to the specific locations, but also broadly as general best practices. And I'm not going to go through all of these here. Again, they're in the report, but they're all kind of in the bucket of traffic calming, which are tools that can use to alleviate traffic congestion and improve safety. So the first area that I'm going to talk about in detail is the Main Street and Visitor Center. Since you guys are village residents and visitors probably watching this, you are familiar with this intersection. It's the only place where cars can perform a U-turn at the end of Main Street. It's nearby the pedestrian tunnel that allows pedestrian access to the western portion of Main Street and Dockside Park. And when we heard from folks in the survey and in the workshop, we heard that people really feel like this is a very dangerous intersection. There's no crosswalks. Crossing is difficult. Cars sometimes don't stop and they make unpredictable U-turns. So it can just be a little bit hairy. It's also challenging for drivers because, pedestrians are crossing every which way and there's fear of having an interaction with pedestrian, and parking along the area along the street can also make those U-turns difficult. So, so we suggested improving the existing crosswalks and installing a new marked crosswalk across Main Street. So I know this image might be a little bit hard to see. I'm not sure how big the screen is that you're looking at. But if you can see here, we suggested adding a crosswalk here. Oh, and you know what a better view is the next one, which is this rendering here. So you can see in the rendering what we recommended: putting high visibility crosswalks, improved pedestrian signage, and pedestrian scale lighting here at this intersection. The second site is Fair Street. So I'm sure you all are familiar with this Fair Street. It's a very narrow residential street that's often congested with parking and traffic, and it worsens on the weekend when there are a lot of visitors, and also on Sundays when there is a lot of street parking because of church that's in service. And what we heard from people in the survey and the workshop was also that the sidewalks on the street were described as being in poor condition and too narrow, somewhat incomplete, and the lack of sidewalk space for pedestrians who are walking in the street. And that the parking and the one-way traffic on the street are also concerning. So Fair Street becomes one way on the weekend when street parking is permitted, and participants also reported that parking on the street can cause some blind spots for drivers. So we recommended, this is a key area where we recommended completing the sidewalks on both sides of Fair Street to improve the conditions for pedestrians and improving lighting along Fair Street. And we also suggested encouraging parking in the municipal lot that we have shown here on the map. And suggested that the village should consider restricting parking along Fair Street and directing vehicles to the municipal parking lot to create a safer, more easily accessible route from Main Street to the parking lot with clear signage directing drivers where to go. Site 3 was Market Street and Lund Terrace. This is what we learned is referred to as the starting point of the loop near the Metro North parking lot. It's a wide intersection that's highly trafficked and very unsafe for pedestrians, but it provides the only access to the Metro North station. It's the only way for vehicles to reach the western side of Cold Spring. Participants in the survey and in the workshop were concerned about the safety of this area, noting a lack of complete sidewalks or crosswalks. They also noted significant blind spots, frequent speeding cars, and confusion regarding who has the right of way. There's also poor lighting at this intersection that creates additional visibility problems for all users, pedestrians, and cyclists. So given the complexity of the current layout of the roads at this intersection, we actually proposed 2 different options. Level 1, which helps define a primary pedestrian route between Main Street and Metro North Station, and adds road signs to help drivers safely navigate the intersection. And then level 2 reinforces everything from level 1, but installs a small roundabout with splitter islands and rapid rectangular flashing beacons at the crosswalk. So here is a rendering of the proposed level 1 improvements. You can see they're highlighted here, adding the crosswalk here, the stop line and street markings here, indicating stop ahead, to help drivers to slow down at the stop. And this is a rendering of what the proposed roundabout could look like. Again, these are just conceptual renderings. These are not technical drawings. These are artistic renderings of what this could look like. So I should make clear that if the village would want to pursue any of these recommendations, you would need a full engineering study in order to assess the feasibility. But you can see how it might work here with directing traffic around the roundabout, limiting interactions between vehicles trying to navigate this challenging intersection. And here's a street view rendering of what this roundabout might look like. You can see here the splitter islands here help to ensure that vehicles stay on the right side of the road. There's a high visibility crosswalk. This rendering also includes some suggested wayfinding signage to help direct people to the train station or other points of interest. So this is what it could look like. Okay, and site 4 is Main Street and Morris Avenue and Chestnut Street. This intersection, the most concern here was about pedestrian safety. Participants noted that The crosswalks were confusing and maybe needed repainting. The crossing signal is not automatic, and participants also noted that pedestrians often needed additional time to cross. There's also concerns that drivers can turn during the red light, which sometimes felt unsafe for the pedestrians. So what we recommended here was some additional traffic calming and improvements to this intersection. You can see we recommended thermoplastic crosswalks, which are high visibility crosswalks, daylighting, which is actually what you can see here in the blue shading, which is restricting vehicles a certain distance from the intersection to help sightlines, and also lengthening the lead pedestrian interval, so giving people more time to cross the street. You could also include some streetscaping elements and just to beautify the intersection, and consider putting in some left turn lanes.
Miriam,
Yes,
sorry, just to be clear, I recall that your report said that the lane, again, because it's a rendering, the left lane turns are not something that you know
correct.
means-
Thank you. Thank you. So yes, the report, the left turn lanes would have to, there's technical feasibility issues with adding the left turn lanes. So thank you for correcting Mayor Foley. You couldn't do all of these things and add the left turn lanes. It's sort of an either or. And Jacob, who is my co-author on the report, did go into explaining why that would be the case. And I'm sorry I didn't include that on the slide, but
Thank you.
yes, thank you for pointing that out. Okay, the last topic that we covered in the report was getting some feedback for improvements in the Cold Spring trolley. Some of the things that we heard from folks, this was included in the interview, and we also did speak with the county about their interest in improving the trolley service. And so some of the things that people would like to see are more clear and consistent service, a wider variety of fare payment options, some route modifications that could address, where people are trying to go on the trolley, and improvements to some trolley stop locations and amenities. So updating the signage, improving things like adding trash cans and better seating, and providing shelter for folks when they're waiting for the trolley when there's inclement weather. So that is my very quick overview of what's included in the report. And I just want to reiterate, you can download the report for more details. I've got the website here and the QR code up on the screen. It's very detailed. And again, I had a team of folks working with me with very detailed technical expertise that I don't have. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact us via email. We can certainly answer them. But I think I'm going to turn it over to back to Mayor Foley now.
Thank you so much, Miriam and David. I thought that I saw, okay, there was a member of the public who joined on. I was hoping we might have questions from the public. Andrew, do you have any questions for NIMTIC? Okie doke. Well, then we will have an initial discussion among us about next steps, and we'll continue having public conversations. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you. See you. Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Have a good night.
She's had anything? Questions to add? Sorry. She's got a ditch.
Sorry, did you hear me? My microphone wasn't unmuted.
Oh,
Thanks.
well, they're
Yeah.
gone now, so if you have
I know they are. Thanks for asking. I didn't have any comments.
Okay. Thank you. So Laura and I have been doing some follow-up with Bugsy on, what are the realities on the ground at these locations, and what of the elements can be put in place in the short term to make improvements. There are some issues with where pedestrians, or where the crosswalks can join the sidewalk, things like, trees in the way, et cetera, et cetera. So he's been very tied up with paving over the last week or so. So we're going to come back to the conversation. He did include in his ask for the budget ADA ramp pads and curbing and stencils, so that, when we do have a good sense of what we can do, we have that set aside. And we're gonna just do some consults on Lund, if that's a direction that the board wants to go. Any discussion on that point?
I have a question about, for like the thermoplast,
The thermoplastic
yeah, for
crosswalk?
the crosswalks and stuff, I assume those are all within our purview and we can do that. Particularly, I'm thinking about the
90,
90.
not 301 and 90.
Yeah.
301 and 90 is not within our purview.
Right.
So what we have to do is ask for a permit from New York State to do the work of daylighting. But as you know, the crosswalks there are really a mess. And we did manage to get good response from the DOT when we passed a resolution related to the Chestnut Street crosswalk. Mind you, they committed to doing the work in 2027. But at least we've got it on their radar. And we've been promised capital upgrades at that intersection for some time. So I was thinking that would probably be good for us to, while we, yes, file for a permit to do the striping of the, we are allowed to paint in no parking areas, et cetera, with a permit from the DOT. So if we're applying for a permit to do that, to also pass a resolution requesting condition upgrades of the crosswalk. And there's pits in those crosswalks,
Yeah,
et cetera.
I now, that I walk it all the time and everyone does, but walking
With
with, with a child and it's horrifying. The conditions are really bad and, obviously I know that for the timing of the lights and stuff, we don't control that, but I do think that's something that, 2027 is,
Well, remember, we just put in a grant application to our two senators regarding pedestrian crossings with
Right.
village streets on 90 and 301. So keep fingers crossed on that. I was hoping that when they were coming through and filling potholes last week, or was it the week before, that they were gonna pay some attention to the crosswalks, and they did not. So that's something that, that we can follow up with, David, Humchick on, to ask them to come back, so at least temporarily fill.
It seems like we're allowed, we can make upgrades
If we pay for them.
if we pay for them. But if it's filling some potholes and making the crosswalks more visible, that's things that are within our,
Yes, we can do it with,
Control,
we can
so-
do it with permit.
with permit, but like, but instead of just waiting for them, maybe those are things that with the permit,
that
we
pay
could make
for.
some
we could
short-term
do.
improvements and we
Yeah.
can pay for it.
I'm certainly open to that. But those aren't,
I don't have a sense of like what the
they're not
cost
huge
is of
big
what I'm
ticket items, but
suggesting.
what it will require is cutting the intersections. Because it's so pitted in the crosswalks at this point, you can't just pave over.
Yeah.
It would need to be milled and paved like it is, like they're doing currently on the other streets. And there is,
Can we use chips for that?
I don't know if we can use chips on a state
On
road,
state
but
road.
it's worth asking.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean, it kind of kills me to take
yeah, I
CHIPS
know.
money from our budget to
Yeah.
pave a state
Yeah.
road, when
Yeah.
CHIPS money is intended for us to help our,
Yeah,
pave
yeah,
our
yeah.
own roads, but it's, it's a question we can ask.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to do something over the summer, so that we're,
Or maybe there's like a reimbursement type of situation,
I don't know, but it's worth exploring.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to do something over the summer, so that when fall comes, we're ready, at least at that intersection. And in the summer, when the traffic is lighter a little bit. I mean, we'll see. I don't know. It's been pretty busy the last couple of weeks even. Liza, do you have any?
No, agree with what you guys are saying.
Grant wise, just a flag, there is this Safe Streets for All, which is a federal grant that it's open now and seems like it's running forward. They had flagged, when I met with NIMTech, they and DOT, they had flagged it as something that we could apply for. I don't know how, like, I've also heard that it's very competitive and it would only be for planning. So, not super high on my, like, try to figure it out and make it happen list. I think we'd have to have a really good reason. Transportation alternatives program is something that we are anticipating coming, but we've heard about. And then the one other one, just flag, is that I was thinking about during the presentation, there's a climate smart date program that I think covers things around complete streets and walkability. And it's a 50% match, but you can do it with volunteer effort. So for things like, we could match it with some, like, and I think local efforts. So like if the highway crew does work and if volunteers organize a community input session or like are helping on the wayfinding or,
Okay.
you know, so there might be a way that could help us with some of the pieces of.
What's the timeline on that one?
It's in the, I think it's like, it's due in the summer. It may be when everything else is due for
The other
the,
stuff.
yeah, like end of July.
I guess, I don't know if this is a question that we can answer, or this may have been a question for them, but I know that they said that this document is for can serve as like a can it serve as a planning document? Can it serve as like how technical of a document is this that they would consider it?
You mean the grant,
Yeah.
grant
I have-
agencies?
Yeah.
I asked them that and they said that for the transportation alternatives program, it would count.
Okay.
Like that we could apply straight for construction,
Wow.
which kind of surprised me.
Yeah.
But like the state streets for all, you have to apply for planning.
Okay.
So but like if they want engineering, I think it's enough for a plan, but then you'd probably apply for like engineering and design and construction. I guess.
Yeah.
But I was glad to hear that it like kind of checked.
Yeah.
That box.
It may be worth asking, David Kumchik, who's the our regional person on the construction side, to come in and have a conversation about what our alternatives are with all of us.
I would really just like to know, like, what can we, I know, I agree that it's very painful to think that we'd have to use our very limited funds for things that should be
Their
paid for by
responsibility.
the county and by the state, but, you know, some of our issues are so dire and even just like the painting of crosswalks would make huge, so that people know where to, I'm not talking about 90, I'm just talking about like even, excuse me, within, like down from there, you know, those things would really make a difference in how people function going back and forth.
It's
Because I
true.
think people are, you kind of just, you make up your own, there's so few actual crosswalks, you make up your own.
Are you talking about on 90 right now?
I'm not talking about 90. 90 is very obviously like, it's clear, even though it's not well marked and it has all these other issues. I'm talking about just like the crosswalks going down.
Down Main
toward-
Street?
Yes.
That is on
That
Betsy's
we
list
can
for the summer. Is to get
Excuse me.
to use the glass, sorry, I don't remember what it's called. It's a particular paint that has a reflective element in it, a glass element in it. He's budgeted for those, time and materials for those, and also the stand-up signs that go in the middle of the main street. Like we have on 9D for the school that says yield for pedestrians and crosswalks in the center of the street.
Yeah.
So we have some of our own work to do on like the intersection at Garden and Main Street has a giant pothole right now that got filled. It got filled and then got plowed out. And that's probably a place that could use another cut and mill. But we're not, we can do some of that work that you're talking about this
Yeah.
summer. And he's planning to do it this summer.
That's great.
On Fair Street, we've got this, one of their recommendations by default, because it coincides with, the officer in charge's recommendations related to managing pedestrian traffic during the closure, right, to take parking off Fair Street. And I think that it's patterning in as a way of working. We can see that there is that part that, you know, the church does use their parking lot more when there isn't parking on the street and it's clearer for the residents. So that can be something that becomes a permanent with a public hearing.
We still have sidewalks going in on Fair Street.
And we have sidewalks going on Fair Street. Yep. And we have the baseline survey done for the south end of Fair Street. We don't have the budget to do it right now, but we can have a public planning process around how we deal with the trees, the sidewalks, the road structure there with chips. And folks aren't gonna like it, but some of those trees have reached the end of their lives, and they're gonna have to come down in order for us to make passable sidewalks there. Some of them are marked for removal by the tree board, not all of them. It's just something that needs to be done. Anything else? Anybody wants to talk about on that topic? I think we have a to-do list. Do you want me to ask David Kumchuk to come in and have a conversation with all of us about 90 and 301?
Yeah, sure.
I think there would be public interest in.
I mean, I don't want to put him in a position where he's just getting battered by
Yeah,
the public,
No,
but
I
I'd like for the
yeah.
public to understand what it is that we deal with in trying to address that intersection.
Well, also with the lines of where our authority ends and where it's picked up by others, I
Yeah.
think it's very unclear to people.
Okay. So, moving on, I have the Clearwater conversation next. So, we talked about last week that Clearwater has bartered with us for, about 10 days of docking in late April and early May, by offering no charge to Haldane for its school tour. Haldane has already been informed, and they are also offering a free community sale for village residents Saturday, May 3rd at 5 p.m. The capacity for the vessel is 45. We would need to handle RSVPs here, so we know who's a resident. The question I have for you guys is, would you be comfortable, what I'm concerned about is someone making an RSVP for 20. And taking up a big chunk of the boat with a single reservation, right? So I'm wondering if you feel comfortable with a limit of 5, that could allow a parent and 3 kids. I mean, it doesn't have to be a family, but under a scenario.
Probably makes sense.
Thoughts? 5 seem like a good number? All
I think that makes sense.
right, so we'll work with their getting flyers together for us.
That's really
Um,
nice.
It's really great. Well,
And I
then-
hope it also like helps promote. But then people then go again and pay for it, you know, like I hope it
Well,
helps
here's your
them.
opportunity.
There you go.
So, they have arranged, they have a new program called Pint Size Pirates, which is for kids ages 2 to 4 with an adult. And they are offering 2, exclusively to Cold Spring residents on Tuesday, May 13th, one at 1:30 and one at 3 o'clock. It's a smaller number of maximum participants because they're small people to keep safe on the boat. So they will allow 15 adult and child pairs. So with the two sessions, they can take 30 pairs of Cold Spring folks, plus extra siblings. So the cost is, they've given us a reduced rate of $15 per adult, child pair, and $5 for an additional child. So if you're a parent bringing 2 kids, second kid is $5. And they're gonna give us registration information. I just wanted to let you know that they'd come through with even more good for Cold Spring. Okay, next is authorizing me to sign an agreement with Munistat. Munistat is the agency that administers our ban and bond processes and borrowing. We've worked with them for years. We have to renew this every year. It's a per fee transaction, and we have a couple of ban items coming up in the next year. I think it's 4,000 transaction ban. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But Michelle is trying to bundle as many of the requests in as together as possible so that we're paying fewer fees, yeah. So would someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the municipal advisor service agreement.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And next, is accepting, sadly, the resignation of Leslie Leonard from the Rec Commission, but she has been on for a number of years now and has done great stuff. The chair has recommended the appointment of Jimmy Taylorson. Jimmy was put forward as a candidate a couple of years ago and was not yet a citizen, so we could not appoint him. He now has a citizenship. Congratulations, I guess.
One
And
good thing comes out of it.
the chair has recommended Jimmy's appointment to replace Leslie. Discussion.
Jimmy will do great.
Yeah, I think it will be too. It's fun. Would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation for Recreation Committee member of James Taylorson.
Second. Favor?
Aye.
And we should, I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Recreation Committee member Leslie Leonard. We should
So
do that to be
moved.
official. Second? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you, Jimmy, and make sure you come in and sign the oath book. We talked about Clearwater already. Next is discussion of Putnam County tax sharing. So we have a resolution before us tonight. I'm gonna give some background for this, and then we can discuss and make a motion. So the background here is an agreement among all of the towns and villages to request in a single voice of the county legislature that sales tax be shared. And it's a slightly intricate request and intricate set of moves, so I'm gonna go through that background. It began as a discussion around the extension of the county sales tax. Putnam County collects a baseline 3% sales tax. And every 3 years since the mid-2000s, the legislature's requested home rule legislation to be able to levy an additional 1%, making a total of 4% county sales tax. It's the same way that we have to ask for enabling legislation related documents. The value of that 1% based on last year's sales is about $22 million. The current 3-year 1% extension is expiring in the state budget cycle, and without a home rule request from the county legislature, it goes away, doesn't get approved. So this county sales tax would drop to 3%. Beginning in January, one of the county legislators proposed not to request the customary 1% extension to give a tax break to consumers. The county finance commissioner advised against it, as did a number of legislators, including our legislator Montgomery, so that the county would not lose that 22 million in tax generation that comes from visitors and property owners. The county executive, with the support of several legislators, prefers to leave the sales tax where it is with the 4%, continue to ask again for the extension of the 1%, and to be able to then reduce property tax. So the benefit of tax reduction actually lands with residents and business owners in Putnam. So on April 1st, over many debates, there were many debates between January and April. They culminated in a contentious meeting on April 1st. The legislative body voted to make a home rule request of 0.75 additional tax rather than the 1%. This reduction would drop the amount of county sales tax by about 5.5 million. County executive vetoed that home rule request. So it goes back to the legislature now. And in that void, the supervisors and the mayors have come together and offered another option. So there are two choices now that Byrne has vetoed the home rule request. One, override veto and return to the 0.75 increase. It does not seem that the legislature has the votes to do that. It's a supermajority. The other option, which we're hoping they choose, is to agree to a compromise put forward by the county executive and the town and village executives. If the legislature can't override the veto and they're not willing to compromise and share with towns and villages, which I'll go into detail about in a second, the county sales tax does, again, default to 3% in the new budget year. At 3% sales tax rather than 4%, that's $22 million in county revenue lost. So right now, the ball is in the legislature's court. And I'm coming to you related to the compromise. So the value of the full 1% is about 5.5 million, again, based on last year. The county executive has asked to share, he would like to share 2.5 of that 5.5 among the towns and villages. So it's a portion of the income that would be generated by 1%. I know the face you're making. It's not a lot, but it's something. The shares among the towns and villages would be based on population, as was used for in 2022, the ARPA and sales tax sharing, the one-time sales tax sharing in 2022. So to put that in perspective, numbers-wise, Cold Spring's share by population of the 2022 sales tax sharing, which was a $5 million chunk, was $100,000 when it was divvied up by population. So with 2.5 being what County Executive Byrne is compromising, we'd receive less by about half than we did in the 2022 one-time sales tax distribution, about $50,000. It's a smaller pie, and our populations in the villages, us, Nelsonville and Brewster, could drop amounts. If sales tax were low, it could drop us really low. So Chris Winward proposed establishing a floor or a minimum to guarantee not less than 50,000 if the number of receipts were lower. And Byrne agreed to that. So that means that if it goes through, we can rely on a $50,000 budget infusion every year, because it will be a structured and codified share, which is what we haven't had before. So yes, I have the same reaction. It's a small amount of money, but if we're getting to a codified place where it's an annual infusion, we're much better off and can negotiate amounts from there. So the allowable uses of the money are broadly defined. We can use it to fund visitor management. We can use it for engineering stormwater projects, almost anything except payroll. The county executive has proposed that if the legislature works with him and accepts this compromise, that he'll cut $1 million in property tax across the county. So, yeah, it's a lesser amount of money than if we were sharing the full 1%. I would love to be sharing the 5.5. The 20, sorry, is that right? Yeah, the 5.5, the quarter of the tax. But I think the context is important. It's the first time that we've had the county executive support for an annual ongoing sales tax sharing, not just one time. It's the first time that other legislators are standing with our District 1 legislator Montgomery to support a perpetual funding mechanism, and that is not nothing, because she's usually the lone voice in the room. It's the first time that all 6 towns and 3 villages have truly collaborated on anything to pressure the legislature, and all the bodies have a resolution for passage on their agendas this week. Some of them are calling special sessions to pass this agenda. There is a timeline here, which is the drive. The timeline is working within, there is a drop dead date after which no more home rule requests can be made during the state budget cycle. So all of this has to happen quickly if we're going to get the 1% request in. So that's why there is push to have it on agendas this week. and also it's a simple budget infusion. We worked really hard to get the county executive past a grant application format, which is where it originally was. Like we have enough grants that we need to apply for.
Why we
And
have
the
to apply for a
energy-
grant for money that we raised?
For
I mean, that's
exactly,
ridiculous.
exactly, and that's exactly the position that was taken in the discussions. It's sorry, it's money we've generated here. Why should we be applying to get it back? And also, it's such a small amount of money, $50,000, to have to go through a grant request process for that amount of money is just a waste of everyone's time. And on their end, on the county's end, the way that the 2022 tax sharing was structured, it was a very elaborate reporting process. They basically took the rules of ARPA and slapped it on top of the tax money. So it was a huge amount of work for Michelle and for Will to do. We had to provide copies of our bid documents. We had to I mean, it was too much for them to manage and too much for us to do. So for the first time, this is a straight budget infusion. I just think we shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So, discussion.
When would we get the money?
It would be the next budget cycle, the next county budget cycle, and their budget cycle starts in August and goes through December, I think, November, December.
Why can't it be payroll? It seems like this is a reliable, seems like this is the kind of thing that we want to be able to use for recurring expenses. Do you?
I mean, my sense is that it's about retaining a feeling of control. You know, at the April 1st legislature meeting, I was just shocked when several of the legislators implied that the villages and towns couldn't be trusted to spend the money carefully and we needed to be monitored. And I got up and made a statement that there's nobody in the county that is more aware of spending money wisely than the towns and villages where we have almost none to spend. So if you want to talk about, spending $400,000 on a kitchen floor at the golf course, that to me qualifies as perhaps an odd use of public funds. Paying for tourism management and for infrastructure seems totally appropriate.
Or additional employees that we really need.
Yeah, well, so, yeah, it's not there, that is the one place that Byrne would not budge was on payroll. They would rather that it be permanent works projects.
I mean, not that we can't.
I mean, look, it
spend
offsets our budget with money we don't have, period.
I think more money is a good step in the right direction for the county to be moving in that direction, and the county executive to be doing so is the right thing. It's not as much as we'd like, it's not as much as it should be, but it's a step in the right direction, and hopefully it'll get us closer in the future.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that we have, right now, at least, we have 4 legislators actively advocating, and that's something that would never leave anybody's mouth but Nancy's before, is that the tax should come home. So it's kind of it's a sea change. So would someone, like to read the resolution? Resolution 18/2025.
Okay. Resolution 18/2025, Putnam County Sales Tax Sharing. Following resolution was offered by myself for adoption and seconded by Trustee Starbuck, to wit, whereas the Putnam County Executive and his administration have again proposed renewing the previously authorized 1% county sales taxes extension to the Putnam County Legislature. And whereas the county is proposing to share a portion of its sales tax revenue with the towns and villages of the county. And whereas Mayor Foley, along with other elected officials from the towns and villages in the Putnam County, have met with County Executive Byrne and together have unanimously agreed to support the 1% county sales tax extension and specified sales tax sharing program. And whereas the increase in proposed mechanism for sharing sales tax is as set forth in a letter attached to and made part of heretofore the letter. And whereas the county executive and the towns and villages have asked state representatives to propose legislation extending the 1% county sales tax increase in the letter. And whereas the village of Cold Spring supports extending the 1% county sales tax rate increase. And whereas it is in the best interest of the village of Cold Spring to participate in the county sales tax sharing to support infrastructure projects, local programs, provide tax relief and other essential services. Now therefore be it resolved, the village of Cold Spring shall take necessary action to support the county extending the 1% county sales tax rate, and be it further resolved that the village of Cold Spring urges the Putnam County Legislature to call a special meeting to consider and adopt the resolutions proposed by the county executive in conjunction with the towns and villages of Putnam County, and it be further resolved that the village of Cold Spring shall take necessary action to support and effectuate the county executive's proposed sales tax sharing at 1/9 of 1% to be allocated to the town and village according to the population, with every town and village to receive a minimum of $50,000, including but not limited to passing any necessary resolutions, entering into any appropriate agreements with the county with such terms as enumerated here and other similar terms set forth by the county, and or providing the county with necessary information on a roll call.
Second.
Trustee Sarba.
Wait, we need a second.
Oh, second.
Oh, no, you did give a second, I'm sorry.
Good.
Yep, I got it, sorry, thinking backwards.
Trustee Sarba.
Aye.
Trustee Woods.
Aye.
Trustee Bozzi.
Aye.
Mayor Foley.
Aye.
I believe the ayes have it.
I should clarify, the letter that is being responded to was sent to everyone as part of backup earlier in the week. It's the letter signed by the supervisors and mayors. It will be included with when we send. And also the elected highway superintendents across the county organized their own letter, similar structure, saying we need this money. So there's a lot of pressure on the legislators right now. It's hard to imagine them going against the will of all the elected officials in the county. So let's hope, we'll see what happens.
Great,
Well,
thank you, Mayor, yeah.
Yes.
Nice work.
Okay. Discussion of, maybe, are you comfortable? I'd like to change the order and get the occupancy tax resolution out because it's a similar topic. This is we wrote a letter to our senator and assembly member. They have in turn asked us for a resolution to extend occupancy tax for another 3 years. So that is this resolution, number 17, 2025.
Can I just ask clarification? So this is the same one that we had before, it's just that it has expired and needs to happen every 3 years.
Yeah, it's all right. It's the same as same concept as the county sales tax, that it's, the state extends the ability for local taxation for a 3-year period, and you have to ask the state again for a home rule request to the authority.
Okay. I'm happy to read it. Resolution 17, 2025, requesting bill sponsorship of enabling legislation for occupancy tax. Following resolution was offered by Trustee Bozzi for adoption, seconded by Trustee Wood. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Cold Spring updated the village code by amending Chapter 118 taxation to include occupancy tax. Whereas the enabling legislation for the Village of Cold Springs occupancy tax, Section 1202 HH2, will be automatically repealed on July 21, 2025, unless the enabling legislation is renewed. Whereas Putnam County does not share sales tax, occupancy tax is one of the few ways that the Village of Cold Spring can capitalize on visitor spending in the village to offset related costs such as infrastructure maintenance, expanded garbage removal, and staff costs, and public safety. Therefore, it is hereby resolved that the village board hereby requests sponsorship of a renewal bill by our state senator Robert Rollison and assembly member Dan Levenberg to extend the enabling legislation for occupancy tax in the village of Cold Spring.
Call vote. Trustee Sarba.
Aye.
Trustee Woods.
Aye.
Trustee Bozzi.
Aye.
Mayor Foley.
Hi.
The ayes have it.
I hope we have to change that language In 3 years.
I know, I hope we can change that language in 3 years too. Okay, the next item is related to a request, a license permit that we've had in the village. It was shared around with the trustees. It's for a request for a food truck be placed on private property at the entrance to Dockside from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. 5 days a week. We do have a licensing chapter, chapter 71, that that gives us some guidance on how to handle license requests like this. But it's not specific to food trucks. And my feeling is that food trucks, we're gonna keep getting requests like this because A, villagers like them, and B, we don't have enough food in the fall for residents. So I expect that we're gonna see more of them. And I feel like we're sort of ill-prepared to review and license them as they need to be. They are subject to New York State review under fire code. So the one that's currently parked out at, with the permission of the state park at Stony Point, did have a fire inspection. There were 3 items that needed to be updated to come into compliance. And then, of course, the health department has to inspect the kid. They need a health department license. But at the local level, we don't have a lot of specificity in our licensing code. Let's see. Well, at any rate, so 71-4 calls out solicitation and licensing on public property, does not make a reference to private property, and that's what this request is. And it is a residential parcel. So it's silent on private property requests, which is what this application is for. The other scenario that we have and will continue to have and address are, things like events at St. Mary's where they bring in multiple food trucks, or events at Mayor's Park where someone wants to bring in a food truck. I think we need to be mindful of mitigating impacts in residential areas, and I think that we should consider what zones, parks and ERC, religious, civic, I can't remember what the E is, I never remember what the E is, entertainment. Not B1, not R1, I think we need to ask all of those questions and think it through. So my proposal tonight is that and I did speak with the village NICOM about this and the village attorney, so that we can have some time to discuss and put appropriate regulations in place. I'd like to propose to the board that we establish a 6-month moratorium on issuing food truck licenses and use that time to draft regulations, taking both zoning and impact mitigation into account. So discussion.
I have a question, because this does seem very similar to the craft fair on St. Mary's lawn, where it's a private property. Is it really our jurisdiction to give?
Well, that's something that I think we need to, in discussing with NICOM, that's part of what I think we need to talk about, because those private events, although they are on private property, they do have an impact on our resources, on our policing resources, on traffic and pedestrian movement. And there are there is within New York State code the capacity to require permits for gatherings above X number of people or for Y purpose. And it strikes me that that's something that could be discussed as part of, it could be an extension of this food conversation, to say what permit, what licensing or / permitting might be helpful for us to have in place, so that we can have some control over things like traffic and planning.
So since we have no laws on the books right now, is the moratorium kind of a way to like freeze any action?
Yeah, so.
Whether private or public?
Yep, so moratoria, basically, and I brought in an example from, you can have that if you want, that's what NICOM sent. A moratorium puts a hold on things that are not already, it puts a hold on taking actions in a class in a certain period of time, with the exception of things that are already in process. So if there were a food truck already approved to be parked in Mayor's Park right now, that person would retain their permit, but new permits would be available. So this is an example of language. This is about the Board of Trustees. This is from the village of Isleway, I think is that pronounced. The Board of Trustees finds that a moratorium prohibiting the filing and acceptance or filing of applications for a building permit for a short period of time is necessary and appropriate to enable the building inspector and the Board of Trustees to standardize application procedures, to determine when building permits will be required, to determine when an architect's seal or engineer's seal must be affixed to an application or set of plans, and to establish inspection. And then you have to define a period of time. And it's usually 6 to 9 months. It can be extended if you need more time. The town recently did this for fuel storage. When there was fuel storage proposed on Route 9D in the Clove Creek watershed, they put a moratoria on the approval of fuel storage until regulations could be in place. So that was a successful venture for them. It's not an unusual thing for municipalities to do. We just have to do it properly, which would mean coming back to the board with a resolution. Thoughts?
I mean, we don't have a policy, right?
We do have capacity within licensing
But
to
I mean,
issue a license now.
yeah, but I don't,
But we
I
don't
don't
have it-
talking about just issuing a license, I'm talking about like, kind of thinking about it as holistically as possible, so that we're not just like issuing random permits for potentially random locations, like there should be some sort of thoughtfulness to
Right.
to what this could look like, because I don't think anyone's like against the concept of having additional food opportunities, particularly, yes, when in the high tourist season, but like just as residents, I think people would enjoy having other options, and food trucks can provide that sort of mix and match of things, but I wouldn't want to just, even if we can, I wouldn't just want to start issuing permits so that they could be in random locations. 'Cause I
Right,
think
that's why I'm proposing the
Yeah.
moratorium, so that we pause and can calculate. And in this case poses the potential for, this application that's before us poses the potential for precedent, right? That you can set up a food truck for 8 hours a day on private property for an unlimited time. Right, I think we want to think about things like timeline. How long does an approval last? And what are the circumstances? What are the zones in which it's workable? If it's on a private property, what are the regulatory issues we have to consider? So this ask is to give us time to do exactly what you're talking about.
I think it makes sense. I have concern about noise and emissions from food
Yeah, me
trucks.
too.
And so where they should be placed, I think matters. I also noticed that one of the prohibited activities is to be in 200 feet of something that's similar.
Yep.
Like, so
Right.
that would also then mean that would put restrictions on it being in commercial areas, which, so I think that how this, it will take some work to figure out.
Yep.
How this applies, and I think it's also a topic that we want to hear from residents and businesses about when we
Exactly.
develop it, so. And I guess as things happen, you don't notice the gaps in the code until
Right.
the issue comes up, so.
Right, so it would take potentially a change, modification of this chapter, potentially a policy to go along with it, and potentially a zoning code something, identify as a use and an allowable use in certain districts.
Is this something where we would ask the zoning board for input, or like, what's our?
We certainly can. I think it's really smart to
First, we
ask
got the
planning
recording
and zoning to give us some thoughts.
I have a question.
Mhm.
What if we, like, in concept, we're okay with this particular food truck? Cause it's found in certain area that is needed. While we update the code to fit, because we haven't really had any other requests for this in a long time.
Not for a while, not since COVID.
So with the precedent of giving them like approval cause a problem in the updating of the code?
I
Like
think
once
it-
we change the code, wouldn't that sort of reset?
Well, it's, what we're talking about is exactly the kind of situation that causes the concerns. It's a residential parcel
Right,
and it's 8 hours a day for 5 days a week. So the whole reason that I think we need to pause and think about how we do it is the scenario that this request for creates. It's not someone asking to put a food truck inside Dockside.
in the driveway.
It's in private property, right? And they have neighbors, right, that need to be considered.
Right.
I think that there's lots of possibilities to do food trucks really well, but we just have to make sure that we're not impacting, creating undue impacts on other residents.
Okay, so basically, we're really saying, like, we don't really want anyone to put a food truck on their private property. Ultimately, because
That's a
it's
discussion
just
that
like-
needs to be had as part of the conversation. I
Right.
think right now it's a question mark about whether that's a good idea or not. Do board members agree?
Yes, I agree. I think if you think of a use variance, as I learned on the zoning board, it's really hard to get.
Mhm.
And this is essentially like, so I think that putting a different use in a part of the in a zoning district that
Mhm.
where it doesn't match the zoning district is a big deal. And so I think we need to study carefully.
And this,
And it's a 6-month study carefully. I don't think we're making,
Right.
clearly, we're not making a decision tonight.
the property owner did approach me about this broadly, not with a specific vendor in mind. And the conversation that I had with her at the time was, I think we need to talk about food trucks as a board and as a community. One, you could bring the idea forward, but we need to have a conversation about it. And the applicant, the vendor knows that we are having this discussion tonight, and he did not anticipate that there would be a yes or a no tonight. So, there we are. So, if the board, I'll make a resolution to have the village attorney prepare a draft moratorium for the issuance of licenses for food trucks. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I'm on the fence. I'm gonna abstain.
You're gonna abstain? So the clerk would note one abstention.
Noted.
You? Okay, bills.
This is the updated one.
Yep.
Yep, okay.
Mhm.
I make a motion to approve bills batch 7817 in the amount of $116,507.46.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And we have minutes from April 2nd, which are very concise and tight. Thank you, Kelly. Any discussion? Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of April 2nd, 2025. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And now we're going to, thank you to the public who's joining us. I'm going to make a motion to enter executive session so that we can discuss the purchase or sale of real property. Second. All in favor? Aye. Have a good night. 8:20. I don't even remember who did it now. Laura, I think Laura made the motion. I made the motion. Executive session, Laura seconded it. We all approved unanimously entering executive session, and we are now here just quickly to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks a lot.